What if the person who loved you most in the world, the one who gave you life, came back from the dead not to comfort you, but to drag you kicking and screaming into the fires of hell? Imagine sitting alone in your room, grieving, clutching your mother's old belongings, when suddenly her phone lights up. A message from her number, but she's buried 6 feet under, and she isn't asking for help. She's demanding that you join her. If that thought sends a chill down your spine, if you feel even the slightest unease settling in your chest, then stay with me. You do not want to face what comes next alone. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe. Sometimes the only way to survive these stories is to know how they end. And trust me, this one stays with you. Before we descend into the darkness, let me warn you, what you are about to hear is not just a ghost story. It is a story of manipulation, of a legacy cursed by fire, and of a daughter who had to fight not just for her life, but for her very soul. Later in the story, we will see a girl standing at the edge of her mother's open grave, staring down at a corpse that refuses to stay dead, while a voice whispers forbidden secrets into her ear. But to understand how she got there, we have to go back to the beginning, back to the moment the cards were dealt, and death came to collect its due. The story begins with a woman named Sari. Sari was not your average mother. She lived in the shadows, a woman of mystery and danger. She moved in circles. Most people only whisper about gangsters, thugs, men who lived by the gun and died by the blade. But Sari had a use to them. She was a card reader. But she didn't just read cards. She peeled back the veil of the future with a terrifying accuracy. She used tarot cards, ancient symbols that seemed to speak directly to her. People came to her desperate, terrified, willing to pay anything to know if the police were coming, if a rival was plotting their death, or if fortune favored them. On this particular night, the air in Sari's parlor was thick with smoke and the smell of cheap liquor. A notorious gangster sat across from her, sweat beading on his forehead. He was waiting for Sari to lay the cards out and tell him his fate. But as Sari shuffled the deck, something changed. The atmosphere grew heavy, suffocating. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to stretch and grow. She flipped the first card, then the second, then the third. Her breath hitched, her hands trembled. Every single card she turned over pointed to one thing, and one thing only: death. But the most terrifying part wasn't the cards. It was what Sari saw hovering just over the gangster's shoulder. A vision of hell itself opened up before her eyes. She saw the jagged, burning landscape of Jahannam, the fires roaring, consuming everything. And standing amidst the flames was a figure of Shaitan, a demon of immense power. It wasn't just watching, it was communicating. This demon, this creature of smokeless fire, leaned in close to Sari's ear. It whispered things to her, secrets of the unseen. You see, Sari's gift wasn't a gift at all. It was a transaction. She wasn't predicting the future through spiritual insight. She was being fed information by a devil. And tonight the devil had a different message. As the gangster stared at her, waiting for a prophecy of wealth or survival, Sari heard the raspy, chilling voice in her ear. This death, it whispered, its voice like sandpaper on bone, is not for the man in front of you. It is for you, Sari. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She was paralyzed with fear. She tried to maintain her composure, looking at her companion, another card reader who studied the deck. He looked at the spread and paled. The cards don't lie, Sari, he murmured, his voice shaking. This is your future, and it cannot be changed. Panic is a strange thing. It can make a person irrational. Sari, despite knowing the dark forces she dealt with, was terrified. She grabbed her things and rushed out, desperate to get home, to get to the one person who gave her life meaning, her daughter Putri. Putri had been texting her mother repeatedly, "When are you coming home? Are you okay?" Sari tried to drive home, but the roads were a nightmare of traffic. A bad accident had brought the city to a standstill. Sari, her nerves frayed, got out of her car to look at the wreckage. She saw a crushed vehicle, unrecognizable, and then, in a blinding flash of headlights and the roar of an engine, another car came speeding out of the darkness. Impact. Searing pain. Then, nothing. When Sari's consciousness resurfaced, she wasn't in her body anymore. She was floating, looking down at a gruesome scene. The car that had been hit was her own. The twisted metal, the shattered glass, and lying amidst the debris was her own lifeless body. Paramedics were already swarming the scene, but it was too late. And then she heard it again, the whisper. The shaitan's voice echoed in the void. Once you believe in the whispers of hell, it hissed. There is no return from this path. Sari was gone. But the horror was just beginning. The scene shifted, and we found ourselves in Sari's home. The atmosphere was heavy with grief. The house was full of mourners, their voices murmuring prayers, asking for forgiveness for the departed soul. Putri stood like a statue, numb. Her mother, the only family she truly had, was gone. Among the mourners were a few key figures. There was Donnie, Putri's classmate and close friend. He had come to offer support, to stand by her side when the weight of the world was crushing her. Then there was Marnie. Marnie was Sari's sister, Putri's aunt. But there was tension in the air. Putri barely knew this woman. Marnie had been absent for years, estranged from Sari. Why had she suddenly appeared now? There was also Septi, the woman who helped around the house, who had cared for Sari and Putri for years. She was the one constant, the familiar face in a sea of strangers. When the prayers ended and the crowd began to disperse, Puri found herself drifting through the house like a ghost. Memories haunted every corner. She remembered how her mother used to teach her about the cards in the secret room behind the kitchen. She remembered the excitement she felt as a child, not understanding the darkness behind the magic. Driven by nostalgia and a deep, aching longing, Putri went to the secret room. It was hidden behind a door that looked like a pantry. Inside, the air was stale, thick with the scent of incense and old paper. This was where her mother had worked. This was where she had spoken to, whatever it was she spoke to. Putri found the wooden box containing the tarot cards. She took it to her room, sat on her bed, and opened it. The cards were cold to the touch. She picked up one card, the Independent Soul. It triggered a memory. She remembered a fight. She had wanted to go out, to have a normal life. But Sari had been frantic, pulling cards, screaming that Putri was in danger. Putri, a teenager then, had been angry. She threw the cards, shouted that her mother cared more about her readings than her own daughter, and stormed out. Now, alone in the silence of the room, Putri wept. She regretted those words. She regretted every moment she had pulled away. That night, a storm raged outside. Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder rolled like the growl of a beast. Putri lay in bed, trying to sleep, but the house felt different. It felt occupied. Suddenly, her bedroom door creaked open. She sat up, her heart racing. It was just her cat, Chudio. She sighed in relief, but then she felt a hand on her shoulder. Cold, heavy. She spun around. No one was there. The room was empty, yet the sensation of touch lingered. She looked at the door. Chio was meowing, staring out into the hallway. Putri got up to close the door, but as she turned to leave, a voice stopped her. Putri. It was faint, a whisper, but it was unmistakable. It was her mother's voice. She froze. The voice called again. It was coming from the hallway. Against every instinct screaming at her to hide, Putri followed the sound. She thought maybe Marnie was calling her, or maybe it was Septi. She went to Marnie's room and knocked. No answer. Then, behind her, the voice came again. Putri, help me. She spun around. There, standing in the shadows of the hallway, was her mother, Sari. She looked pale, translucent, her eyes filled with a sorrow that broke Putri's heart. Mom? Putri whispered, tears welling up. But as quickly as the apparition appeared, it vanished, leaving only Marnie standing there, looking confused. Putri, shaken, asked Marnie if she had called her. Marnie denied it. The tension between them spiked. Putri didn't trust Marnie. She felt like an intruder in her own home. Putri retreated to her room, trying to convince herself it was just grief, just hallucinations. But then her phone buzzed. Ping! She looked down. The message was from her mother's contact. Why didn't you answer my calls? Putri stared at the screen. Her blood ran cold. The phone was in her hand. Her mother's phone was in her possession, turned off in her drawer. Another message. It's me, Putri. Don't be afraid. Fear turned into anger. She thought someone was playing a cruel prank. Someone had accessed her mother's number. She dialed the number from her own phone, expecting a stranger to answer. Instead, the phone in her own drawer began to ring. The sound was deafening in the quiet room. Ring, ring, ring. She opened the drawer. The phone was lighting up. Incoming call. My daughter. Her hand shook violently. She rejected the call and threw the phone onto the bed. This wasn't a prank. This was impossible. She tried to sleep, to shut out the world, but the messages kept coming. Believe me, Putri, I am here. And in the corner of the room, sitting at her desk, Sari's spirit appeared again, watching, waiting. The next morning, the sun brought no comfort. Putri woke to find Marnie rummaging through her drawers. When Marnie saw Putri waking, she slammed the drawer shut, looking guilty. What are you doing? Putri demanded, her voice sharp with suspicion. I was just looking for Sari's phone, Marnie stammered. I thought maybe you had it. Putri snatched the phone away. Why do you want it? Marnie tried to explain, tried to offer comfort, but Putri pushed her away. The distrust was a wall between them. Putri had to go to university, but she gave Septi the key to her mother's private room, asking her to keep it safe. At the university, Putri tried to focus, but her mind was fractured. She met Donnie in the hallway. She told him about the messages. Donnie, ever the rationalist, tried to calm her down. It's probably just a glitch, he said, though his eyes betrayed his doubt. Suddenly, Putri's phone buzzed again. A message from her mother. A lecturer has died. Your class will be cancelled today. Putri stared at the screen. Seconds later, the professor entered the hall, his face pale. He announced that a colleague had passed away suddenly. The class was cancelled. Putri's blood turned to ice. How did the message know? Was it really her mother? Before she could process it, she was cornered by Bella and her group of friends. They were the popular girls, vain and cruel. They offered their condolences, but their sympathy felt thin. They invited Putri to a party that night. Putri initially refused, but they wouldn't take no for an answer. As they walked away, another message appeared on her phone. Don't go to the party. They are not your friends. Putri felt a surge of defiance. She was tired of being told what to do, even from beyond the grave. But as she walked to her car, a strange girl approached her. Please, the girl whispered, looking terrified. Don't ignore your mother's messages. Bella and her friends, they mean you harm. The warning unsettled her, but the need to feel normal, to be around people, drove her to the party that night. It was held at a secluded club, dark and loud. When Putri arrived, the place was empty. Suddenly, the lights cut out. Figures jumped out from the shadows. It was Bella and her friends laughing. It was a prank, a sick, twisted joke. Putri was angry, but Bella put on a sweet face. Come on, Putri, we just wanted to have fun. Actually, we wanted a favor. They knew about her mother. They wanted a reading. Bella was obsessed with Donnie. She wanted to know if he was her soulmate. Putri refused. She didn't know how to read cards like her mother. She didn't want to touch that world, but they pressured her, mocking her, pleading with her. Finally, exhausted and wanting them to stop, she agreed. She sat at a table and shuffled the deck Bella handed her. The room grew quiet. The air pressure dropped. Putri felt a strange sensation, a cold breeze blowing against her ear. She flipped a card. Negativity. Another. Helplessness. Suddenly, the lights in the club flickered violently. A voice, deep and distorted, boomed through the room, calling Putri's name. It wasn't human. Only Putri could see it. In the darkness, the shaitan stood, its eyes burning with malice. It lunged at her. Putri screamed, grabbing the cards, and fled from the club. She ran to her car, her heart pounding in her throat. She drove home in a haze of terror. When she arrived, the house was dark. She heard noises coming from her mother's room. She crept inside. Marnie was there, searching through the closet again. What are you looking for? Putri shouted. Marnie turned, startled. Sari's cards, she said. I need to find them. Why? Sari told me. She told me to keep the cards away from you, Marnie claimed, her voice desperate. She said they are dangerous. You're lying, Putri yelled. You never spoke to her. You weren't here. The argument escalated. In a fit of rage, Marnie shoved Chio, the cat, off the table where he had jumped. The cat hissed and ran away. The violence of the act shocked Putri. She saw Marnie in a new light, not as a grieving sister, but as a threat. Putri stormed off to her room. She took out the cards she had hidden. Her hands shook as she laid them out. The death card, the same card that had doomed her mother. Suddenly, a whisper filled the room. It wasn't in her ear this time. It was inside her head. Join me, Putri. Do the work. Save my soul. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block it out. She crawled into bed, pulling the covers tight, praying for the morning. But the night had only just begun. In the early hours of the morning, Marnie was awake, driven by a desperate mission. She had managed to get the key to Sari's secret room. She was tearing the room apart, looking for the source of the power. She knew something was wrong. She knew her sister had dabbled in something dark. As Marnie searched, she felt it. A presence. She spun around, nothing. She turned back to the desk. The reflection in the mirror behind her shifted. A face appeared. Sari's face, rotting, screaming. Marnie gasped and spun around again. Nothing but shadows. Then something touched her shoulder. She turned, and there, standing inches from her, was the terrifying visage of the Shaitan, mimicking her sister. Marnie didn't scream. She couldn't. The fear paralyzed her. She grabbed Chio, who had wandered in, and clutched the cat to her chest for comfort, backing away. The entity laughed, a sound like breaking bones, and vanished. The next morning, chaos erupted. Chio was missing. Putri searched everywhere. The house felt emptier than ever. She went to the university, distracted and terrified. She told Donnie about the previous night. Then her phone buzzed. A photo message. It was a picture of Marnie, taken the night before, clutching Chio in the dark. The angle was impossible. It was taken from inside the room, from the shadows. Putri showed it to Donnie. Marnie is behind this, she said, her voice trembling. She's working with whoever is doing this. Donnie looked at the photo, his face grim. Or maybe, he said slowly, someone is trying to make you think it's Marnie. But Putri was beyond reason. The whispers were getting louder. The messages were becoming more frequent. Your aunt is the enemy. Trust no one. That afternoon, Bella and her friends approached Putri again. They mocked her about the failed reading, teasing her about the video Bella had secretly taken. Putri snapped. The whisper in her head urged her on. Hurt them. They deserve it. Putri grabbed a bottle and smashed it. Her eyes rolled back. She lunged at Bella, the glass shard raised. She wasn't herself. It was as if a puppet master had seized her strings. Donnie grabbed her just in time, pulling her back. The fog lifted. Putri looked around, seeing the terror in the eyes of the students watching her. She had almost killed someone. She ran to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall. She sobbed, gripping her hair. What is happening to me? She whispered. Then she heard it, from the stall next to hers, a soft crying, Mom? The door creaked open. Standing there was Sari, weeping, her form flickering like a bad television signal. Help me, Putri, the ghost moaned. I am burning. You have to save me. Putri backed away, tripping over her own feet. You're dead. You're dead. The ghost's face twisted into a snarl. I am in hell. You are the only one who can get me out. Take the cards. Read them. Putri squeezed her eyes shut. You're not my mother. When she opened them, the ghost was gone. Putri left the university, broken and terrified. She got on the bus with Donnie. The other students looked at her with fear and disgust. Whispers followed her. Freak. Psycho. As the bus started moving, Pruchi's phone chimed. Get off the bus. Now. She looked out the window. The bus was approaching a bridge. Another message. The bridge will collapse. Get off. Putri panicked. She screamed at Donnie. We have to get off. Donnie tried to calm her, but she was hysterical. She dragged him off the bus at the next stop, just before the bridge. Minutes later, sirens wailed in the distance. News traveled fast. The bus had been in a horrific accident on the bridge. Several students were critically injured. Donnie stared at her, his eyes wide. How did you know? Putri couldn't answer. Was her mother really protecting her? Was the spirit trying to save her? I need to go home, she whispered. When Putri arrived home, she found Septi frantic. It's Chio, she said. they ran to the storeroom. There on the floor was a trail of blood. Putri followed it, her heart hammering. She found Chio's lifeless body. Putri screamed. She turned on Marnie, who had come running at the sound of the scream. "You killed him," Putri accused, her voice cracking with grief. "You killed my cat." Marnie denied it, but the photo on Putri's phone seemed to prove otherwise. Putri ordered Marnie to leave. "Get out of my house. I never want to see you again." Marnie, seeing the madness in Putri's eyes, had no choice. She left, leaving Putri alone with Septi. That night, the storm returned. Putri sat in her room, surrounded by the cards. The whispers were relentless now. She felt a crawling sensation in her ear. She reached up and felt something, a small, hard shell. She pulled it out. It was a beetle, a large, black beetle. She stared at it in horror as it scuttled away. Suddenly, the room began to spin. The walls melted. The floor turned to mud. She wasn't in a room anymore. She was standing in the card-reading room, but it was transformed. A pentagram was drawn on the floor in blood. Candles burned with black flames, and in the center of the circle stood Sari, or what looked like Sari. But her feet, they weren't human feet. They were cloven hooves, charred and black. "Putri," the thing rasped. "Take the cards. Take my place." Putri backed away. "You're not her." The creature lunged. It seized Putri, dragging her toward the circle. Putri felt her will slipping away. The beetle, the possession, it was too late. Her eyes turned black. She grabbed a shard of glass from a broken mirror. Septi, hearing the commotion, rushed into the room. "Putra?" Putri turned. Her face was a mask of cold fury. She attacked Septi, pinning her to the ground. She raised the glass shard, ready to strike. "Putri, stop!" Septi screamed, struggling. But it wasn't Putri anymore. It was the Shaitan. Suddenly, the door burst open. A man rushed in cart. He was an expert in the occult, a man Marnie had called for help. With him was Donnie. They had arrived just in time. Cart began chanting, sprinkling holy water. The Shaitan inside Putri, a sound that tore through the house. Putri collapsed, convulsing. Cart pressed on, reciting verses, commanding the entity to leave. With a final, ear-splitting scream, the black smoke poured out of Putri's mouth and vanished into the darkness. Putri lay on the floor, gasping for air. She was back, but the nightmare wasn't over. Cart looked at the girl, his face grave. "You are not safe here," he said. "The thing that possessed your mother, it wants you now. It needs a vessel." Putri sat up, trembling. "My mother, she was possessed?" "Your mother made a deal," Cart explained. "She sought power, knowledge of the future. But the future belongs to God. To know it, you must deal with the devil." The Shaitan gave her the readings. In exchange, he fed on her soul. And now that she is dead, he wants a new host. You. The realization hit Putri like a physical blow. All those messages, the warnings, the visions of hell, it wasn't her mother begging for help. It was the devil begging for a new puppet. He was using her mother's face, her voice, her grief, to manipulate Putri into picking up the cards. "The cards are the link," Cart said. "We have to destroy them, and we have to bury them with your mother. It's the only way to sever the connection." A plan was formed. They had to go to the graveyard that very night. Putri, Donnie, Cart, and Septi drove to the cemetery. The rain was pouring, turning the earth into thick mud. They reached Sari's grave. It was a grim scene. The wind howled through the tombstones. Putri stood at the foot of the grave, clutching the box of cards. Cart and Donnie began to dig. As the earth was moved, Putri felt a pull. A voice, "Putri, don't let them do it." She looked down. The freshly turned soil was shifting. "Stay with me, Putri, forever." Suddenly, hands shot up from the mud. Sari's corpse, bloated and pale, pulled itself halfway out of the grave. "Don't leave me in the fire," Putri screamed, stumbling back. But this time, she knew the truth. "You are not my mother," she screamed into the storm. "You are the Shaitan. I reject you. I reject your lies." The corpse stopped. It let out a roar of pure rage. Cart seized the moment. He grabbed the box of cards from Putri and threw them into the open grave, onto the corpse. "Cover it!" he shouted. They shoveled the mud back onto the grave, burying the cards. As the last of the dirt covered the box, the corpse stopped moving. The screaming stopped. The air grew still. It was over. Putri fell to her knees in the mud, weeping. But these were tears of release. She had faced the devil and won. The next morning, the sun rose on a quiet house. Putri sat in her mother's study. But this time, she wasn't looking for spells. She was packing away the remnants of that life. She found a picture of her and her mother from happier times. Behind the frame, she found an envelope. It was a letter, written by Sari before she died. "My dearest Putri, I am sorry. Sorry for not being the mother you deserved. Sorry for the distance, the secrets. I have fallen into a darkness I cannot escape. The whispers have become too loud. I fear for my soul, but more than that, I fear for yours. Do not follow my path. Do not touch the cards. I sold my future, but you must live yours. Be good. Pray for me. I love you." Putri held the letter to her chest and cried. Finally, she had her real mother back. Not the demon, not the ghost, but the woman who loved her, buried beneath the guilt and the sin. She went outside, where a small fire was burning. She threw the last of the strange artifacts into the flames. She watched them turn to ash. Marnie was there, standing by the car. Her arm was in a sling, but she was smiling. Putri walked over to her. No words were needed. Putri hugged her. She wasn't alone anymore. Donnie stood nearby, watching them. They had survived. The story of Sari and Putri is a terrifying reminder. Not everything that whispers from the dark is who they claim to be. Sometimes the things we think are gifts are actually chains, and sometimes the only way to save the ones we love is to let them go. If this story left a mark on you, if the chill of the graveyard still lingers in your mind, let me know in the comments below. Sometimes, sharing the fear is the only way to make it fade. And if you don't want to face the next story alone, make sure to subscribe. The shadows are always watching, and there are plenty more tales left to tell.